Okay, good day everybody. DK Mr. V Amps, and today's adventure is a Blackstar HT Club 40. Okay, so I don't know why they would call it 40. I think this, unless this has 4 EL84s, I think this has EL84s in it. But anyway, this one, the original stock tubes were changed to something else, and they didn't last for too long, and then the tubes were changed again, and they failed again. So there's something maybe unstable about the power tubes. It is possible to get a couple bad ones in a row, but unlike some of the other projects we have around here where we just kick the tires and light the fires, I have a general idea of what's going on here, so we're going to drop the chassis and do a visual inspection and see if there's anything in there toasty or weird or something before we hit the power to it. Okay, so alright, so supplied with the amp today there are two new production Mullered EL34s, and the preamp tubes, there was one Mullered and one Electro Harmonics, and all tubes test good and strong and look fine. So I'm gonna take a little bit of a different approach. What I was doing before, let me set these well out of the way so they don't get wrecked. And let's see, what I was thinking when I looked at the amplifier, the first thing I thought is, what a dumb design. Okay, so let's set this up here. There's our chassis. Tubes removed, of course. We have these big honkin' tube sockets, and they are soldered to a PC board, and the tubes are going that way with spring clamps pressing on them. So the whole time the board is trying to press the tubes out of the, yeah, just not good. And we're missing a screw down here. I'm not the first monkey in this rodeo. The other thing I learned about these is these also have a combination of fixed bias and cathode bias, so they're biased weird. But I have a theory and an idea that I want to explore, so let me take this board out and sit it up ass over apple cart and see what I see. Well, kids, I hope I recorded the other footage earlier. Something tells me I had the camera on the wrong mode and it wasn't recording, but anyway. Chinese New Year. This board doesn't look like it was really well cleaned on this side. My LED lights are making an awful lot of reflection, but at least there's light. These tube sockets, who thought this was a good idea? The tube socket is pressing against, you've got 3 big solder tabs here that are supposed to keep the tube from popping out, and then you've got all these other pins. So the springs that hold the tube from falling out of the socket are actually trying to press it out of the board all at the same time. And the board was missing a screw. A couple of these solder joints, particularly like this one and this one, they look pretty janky, and dude was saying after he was playing it for a little while it started to sound distorted, and even on a clean channel. And when you have distortion on a clean channel, a lot of times that's like half wave where one tube's working and the other tube's not. That sounds really, really wanky. So yes, and we're going to insult this in British today. We're going to use terms like wanky and the soldering is bollocks and things, because it's supposed to be a British amp. But I'm going to go through and I'm going to reflow all the solder around these. Right offhand, the tubes look healthy. They test healthy. The solder joints here look a little rubbish. So we're going to try that as a good starting point, and then maybe we'll kick the tires and light the fires. Okay, so I've gone through and I've reflowed all of the tube socket pins. My guess is, this is a guess, but it looked pretty crappy, but you never know till you test it. Some of this stuff that, like the high voltage, the plate voltage, that's coming on the top of the board. And so that actually picks up on a trace on this side of the board. So that solder's got to be good and strong all the way through the board to that tube pin. That's true on both sides. The red for the one side of the power transformer and the black for the other. Also, the cathode resistors here. Yeah. Bias stuff, a lot of this stuff is on this side of the board. And if you're not generous with the solder, when you change tubes or anything like that, you get a crack, and then you're done. And of course they're using ROHS lead-free solder, which is more likely to crack. And I'm using traditional Kester 6040, which is less likely to crack. So hopefully that's going to help. At this point I think I will put the board back in the chassis, plug it in, and then we'll kick the tires, light the fires, and see if it's going to behave itself or it's going to be a rotten little animal. We should also probably get a gist of how much current is going through these tubes also at idle. Be a good thing. Okay, so I've got it back together loosely. I put a couple of nuts on the faceplate and the input jack. I put the nut on and I just, gently screwed the chassis back in the body. The back's not on or anything like that. In turning this on, the first thing I noticed is it is like stone silent, which is a surprise. Most amps have some kind of hiss or something, when they're on. This one, no. I thought the speaker was disconnected or something because there was like no hiss, no hum. Then I plugged in a cord to it and yes, it makes noise. So I'm going to check to see if the output is distorted, because that's what we were hearing, is the clean channel is supposed to sound distorted. Also, in terms of the biasing on there were some bias guides and some test points and things to do. The bias on this only swings between about -77 and -79. There's very little swing in this. So, the factory bias is, well in probably the cool safe range. I don't think you could over bias this if you wanted to, unless you got some funky tubes that were hotter than Hades. So let's plug in the guitar and see if this sounds like a clean channel. Okay, so with the knobs off, I don't know where the tone is set. I guess the middle. This is the clean channel. That sounds fine. And then I think I have the master up. Okay, now the master's up all the way. And bring in just a little bit again. Yeah, okay, and then we'll bring in some more. This should be distortion territory. That's like gut-wrenchingly loud. I'm sure our camera loves it. So we'll take that down a few pegs. Okay, so that's fine. Let's see if the dirty channel sounds okay. Got to be careful with these pots because I don't have them all screwed down yet. Okay, it sounds like we're underwater, like there's no trouble. So that seems to be working. So anyway, guy said that, this was flopping out on him after it ran for a number of songs. We'll say half a dozen songs. So I guess my only option is to let this cook and, just obviously I'm going to just do some other remedial tasks around here for a while. And If it crackles, pops, and does anything weird, we'll go back in after it. And if it sits here and behaves like a little angel, we'll call it good. So maybe I'll just let it cook and put the knobs and stuff back on it. And, we'll give it like, 3-4 hours. And if it's still playing clean and happy and whatever, then I think I can just put it back together and call it good. I mean, logically, I think we got it. Those solder connections on the tubes look like poop. And, I mean, that would explain why it would sound like rubbish if there was a problem with the tube connections. It's working fine to me. Alright, kids, so we'll see after a while if there's anything else to talk about.